where it's my pleasure to welcome Alla Anashenkova, who spent some time at in Tesla and is now at ThroughPut AI. And her talk is going to be on coming up with a timely product mix that responds quickly to customer signal, as far as I understand it from the abstract. And because we didn't have time to connect, is it okay, Alla, if you take questions at the last 5 minutes?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and then I will give you a signal after 20 minutes so that you know then when we're at time, or maybe like with Nitsi now 22 minutes.
Okay, I'll pay attention for the signal.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the stage is yours.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, and thank you so much for joining for our Practitioner series today. So I want to share some winning strategies to optimize product mix using AI-powered demand forecasting, and share how we do it at ThroughPut AI. So just to give you a rundown of the agenda, how we structured this 30 minutes, I'll introduce the company, ThroughPut AI. Then we can talk about some of the impact that we've seen of COVID-19 on the supply chains and the operation. We can dive into some of the traditional demand forecast challenges that we've seen, and then introduce the module within our platform that covers the demand forecasting, demand sensing, and how that connects to the rest of the operations in our platform. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to actually touch on the demo, and we'll wrap up with Q&A. So a bit about myself. I have over 10 years of experience developing software, data products and systems to scale operations in various areas and industries like automotive. I've spent 8 years ramping up Tesla operations and launched 3 cars along the way. I spent some time optimizing supply chain and logistics and e-commerce, and now focusing heavily to scale that knowledge as part of building the enterprise solutions for operations and businesses in the industrial space. About ThroughPut. ThroughPut is a Silicon-based industrial AI software company that empowers companies to leverage their existing data to optimize their supply chains and operations, aiming to increase output, inventory turns, and ultimately profitability. We have been founded in 2017. We're a small team of 15 people, but growing, and please feel free to connect with us, as a lot of people who are attending this space are very useful talent for us. We are globally based, although these headquarters are in Silicon Valley. We have presence in multiple countries, as well as the partners all over the world, and our customer base is also quite global in nature as well, as supply chains are applied everywhere. At the same time, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? So as you think about the supply chain and operations and the businesses that are scaling, right? First, we are starting with physical world, where we have spot solutions that have need to be implemented in order to increase visibility to what's going on machine level, with PLCs, with the sales and the cashier systems and so forth, right? And so as the company also grows, the company start investing into transactional systems that help manage their day-to-day operations. On the other side, we have the digital world, where all of this data is residing, and IT, supports the collection, maintenance, and distribution of this data. But at the same time, the challenge is that a lot of investments are from the company side into transactional systems of different nature. So the decision making becomes pretty siloed on each level of operations, whether it's tactical, strategic, or going from one department focusing on distribution to another department focusing on sales. The crosstalk between all these different operations becomes a bit challenging, and that is really the challenge of collaborative, focused on companies' profitability approach that we're trying to embed as part of our solution. So we tap into your existing transactional systems that have timestamp data and leverage it to understand what is the actual reality of operations capabilities, what is the demand, and how to couple that understanding together to eliminate wasteful activities and really reorient the supply chain to be more effective and efficient. And some of the applications of that effort are seen in through our work in foods and agriculture industries, and you can see some of the examples of the impact that we've been able to extract from those engagements, and heavily successful applications on the industrial side with and also this food and distribution, finished good distribution side. I'd like to also kind of highlight and thank our advisors. We have a pretty diverse network of people who are helping us also build the solid solution and put it forward into the market, which comprises from people who are experts in the software space, as well as the operations domain space that ran several businesses and scaled them, and also have taught or applied in real life various machine learning and AI solutions. So switching over the topics from throughput to more global impacts of COVID on supply chain, what we've seen throughout this past year and a half is there are a few constraints that are really mainly impacting how our reality right now. There are demand prediction constraints, supply chain constraints, and resource capacity constraints as well. And we've seen that in lockdowns, factory closures, product level restrictions, extended delivery lead times have impacted our supply chains and ability to predict what's going to happen, how our products will reach their final final customers, right? At the same time, companies kind of move between, just in time to just in case type of inventory management because of this unpredictability of the market conditions, right? And lastly, resource capacity constraints have resulted in the empty shelves on our grocery stores, as well as some of the businesses not able to open up fully operations because of not being able to get the products where they need it the most. So how does that impact our kind of traditional, coupled with the uncertainties that we're seeing right now for these turbulent times? What are the different traditional demand forecasts and challenges that we're usually faced with? In general, I would say that the forecast would be vain if certain things are not followed appropriately, and it stems through several topics that I would say are the main impacts, right? The volume, picking the right volume of the data for leveraging the learning activity from the historical data, right? How much data is needed to actually extract the meaningful insights that can be then predicted into the future, right? How can we understand how much data is needed to do the trending, the seasonality, and cyclicality extraction with the right certainty, right? Augmentation is another factor, right? So how do we identify and factor in relevant additional data sources that can enhance our understanding about our outlier behavior, right? So it's important to pick the right sources of information that will be necessary to augment our demand trend that we are analyzing, right? What are the inputs that we are using? Which data, which type of data represents our demand is very important. And it's important not only for understanding what demand is, but also what impacts it, right? So in our case, for example, what we've seen is there are different companies have different availability of data representing their final customer demand. And in some cases, the supply, when you talk about supply chain, you may think about the external or internal ERP system as a representation of the demand, or store ordering something from a warehouse as a representation from demand. But at the same time, factoring in the final source, right? The actual customer that went to the store and picked up the item from the shelf and then ordered it would be the more true representation of what's happening, because every part of the chain has a certain impact to how they are ordering, how they are planning to their needs, right? And how much they're padding their activities to make sure that their job is done correctly. And lastly, the noise versus signal is kind of segmenting what is noise and what is signal in your data is an important part, because at times we are confusing correlation with causation, right? And we can see and attribute some external behavior, external attribute as a wrong indicator of the impact to the shift in the demand that we're seeing. So with that, what are some of the causes or some of the resulting problems from not really factoring in those 4 pillars that we just discussed? Is we can start treating demand spikes as new norm, like the expanded demand for the toilet paper as a continuous demand that's going to happen in the future, and start planning for producing more and more of that product over time would be incorrect, because we would at some point satisfy everyone's needs and just have overstock, but at a different place, not a warehouse, but at the end customer shelves that need to be depleted, right? Ignoring operations capabilities, and there's another problem that we've seen from incorrectly using forecasts, or rather not linking the forecast to the operational capabilities. Like what we've seen as a result is shortages in the ventilator supply for our hospital, or even ability to quickly deliver the vaccines to other population at the beginning of the ramp up of that activity. And lastly, crystal balling is another outcome of a negative type that we see through incorrect use of forecasts. So our solution to those problems that we see really steps up the situation is we use statistical process control as well as demand sensing to couple together to really, from one side, apply the learnings from the past into the future, where they are strong enough to be leveraged and they are well explained, but at the same time also sensing what is the immediate change that we are seeing in the market right now, right? That a user or a business user needs to understand and react to. We tie demand to actual capacity, right? So it's very important to not only understand how much demand there is right now, but how am I able to prepare my operations activities, my supply chain partners to be able to actually pull all the operations towards meeting that demand in the most effective manner. And lastly, using historical demand as a baseline for what is the target to hit. So in our solution, where I'll walk you through a couple of things that we've developed right now as part of the final delivery to the customer, right, and the approach. The ThroughPut demand sensing module, and it's really it's one of several modules that the platform contains. But we have chosen demand to be almost a prerequisite for any sort of customer engagement, because we want to understand the demand and then tie everything else in the operations to that understanding. But we focus on it easily predicting future demand patterns to streamline the flow of materials, processes, output, and free cash flows, tying the financials to that demand as well across the integrated supply chain through data-driven, cash flow focused, and AI-powered approach. We've built a are able to rapidly analyze and correlate demand-based insights in easy to digest format. As a starter, we focus on the classification of the product mix within a company, right, or a business entity, which really helps you focus on how much variability is there in the product mix, which is one of the understanding, and where the various products that the company sells fall as part of XYZ side of the matrix, which talks about ability to predict the demand going forward and assessing the stability of it, as well as from the impact to your bottom line, right? So there are fewer products that that with their value and volume impact majority, like bring the most positive impact to your bottom line. And with B and C class, it's the diminishing impact, right? So this helps us narrow down the focus on the right SKUs that we need to, from one side, have a really good operations support strategy in place, not to miss the demand for positive, profitable product lines. At the same time, focusing us on periodic review of items that fall into kind of losers category, right? Or seemingly losers. Sometimes some of the items are really enablers of the demand on the other side, but we want to make sure that there is a continuous review of this segment that is called CZ, which really, if eliminated, can expand the capacity to support the profitable lines that are in AX and AY category. We improve the overall product mix and serviceability to enhance revenue margins. Accurately forecast and respond to fluctuation margins and inventory needs. Identify and expose patterns across past events and quickly predict demand trends. I want to switch over to a demo at this point. 1 second. And show you how it works in reality, right? So talking about the distribution chain, which in very high level, it has, I believe, 71 items on the SKU level. On the end product side, It has the free main distribution centers that support over the 100 stores across the region. And so what we can quickly see here is what I've been describing before on the ABC and XYZ classification, and quickly track for AX class, for example, which represents high consumption value, even demand, and reliable forecasts. Is that product mix actually static, right? The items that fall into AX bucket here, are they the same over the course of the year? And you can see that on the line side is how much sales we've generated with the products that fall into this category, but at the same time, how many products were a part of this category over the course of the date range that we are reviewing. You can see that we have from 1 to up to 5 items over the course of the year that have contributed to this to those sales. Quickly, we can go from a high level overview to the statistics on top performing and underperforming sales items, and review how our operations supporting this products, from sales, total throughput, which is kind of an equivalent of the gross margin for the SKU, what's the total volume, and tying this to the operations performance, like on time and full delivery, are we able to meet our demand in full, and how our internal operations supporting that, right? OSA is the metric that is important from the internal distribution side, which is reflective of on-shelf availability of the product. So it's a good indication to look at an impact to OTIF through availability of the product to be supplied from, let's say, a nearby warehouse. From the review of actual items, right, we are able to look at the historical trends and forecast what's going to happen in the future. But also, as I mentioned, we look at it from the statistical process control perspective. So what you want to do is really I understand what are the 2 lanes that my demand is fluctuating between, right? And that's what helps operations to plan for this 8% of normal behavior for the SKUs, especially the ones that are in the X class from the demand predictability perspective. But also our system quickly identifies what are those sort of outliers, right? And small shifts, large shifts, and demand patterns that we can observe. And in this case, you can see three spikes that are kind of interesting.
I didn't give you a 5-minute warning. We're at 24 minutes past. Sorry. So you have another couple of minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So a few things I wanted to show from the augmentation side. We have enabled our users to quickly load various attributes against our demand to check what has been having impact on, well, in this case, tampering with our demand. So quickly you can highlight where, for example, holidays happened, right? And whether there was an impact. At the same time, highlighting promotions. And as you can see in this example that because in the forecast, we also have a promotion, and we've learned from the past, what is the impact of this 40% discount, for example. We're able to project this forward effectively. The same thing could be done with pretty much any regressor that is meaningful for impact to a business, but selectively for the type of business that we are reviewing. So in some cases, weather would be a good indicator, or your economic conditions and GDP, investment of the government into a certain sector to understand the demand. Tying it back to operations is really important, right? So we not only want to understand what the demand is, but also how the on-shelf availability has been supporting it. And also from the logistics perspective, if we have any sort of gaps in performance for on-time delivery to it. And tying all of that back to how do you manage inventory? Where do you stock the product in order to support the level of variability that you see in the demand? And how do you align your operations with the assets that you have to support that demand, and so to support the right inventory levels and the right location that you feed to the final customers. So just wrapping up, I will switch to my presentation again. 1 second. Are you able to see the presentation slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the benefits of all of that is with improved forecast accuracy, you can improve your production plans at SKU, shelf, and location level. You're able to focus on where the higher margins are from your activities, whether you're tampering with demand with the promotions, and highlight which product promotions are creating a better revenue gains for your business. And really focus on the better optimal product mix, right? To see which are the SKUs that you should continue maintaining, how are you supporting it from your operations perspective, at the same time highlighting SKUs that are occupying space in your supply chain that you need to start eliminating and freeing up that capacity for more productive activity. Eliminating bottlenecks by aligning upstream and downstream operations, and then ultimately boosting your overall throughput by converting previously lost sales into additional throughput. So our platform also focuses on highlighting not only what your forecasted demand is, but also how your operations impacted it and how much lost opportunity in that moment was created, right? So you can quickly quantify where your efforts will yield on improvement side, will yield the most benefit for your business. Finally, just to kind of highlight how to get started with us.
Yeah, if you want to take another questions, we have 2 minutes left. So
okay. Yeah, that would be good. And while we are, would you like me to? Maybe
if you can wrap, is this last slide?
It is the last slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So
sorry.
I think I just wanted to highlight the time to value aspect. It's easy to connect with us and start getting ROI from the engagement, and all we need is really the transactional timestamp data to get us started and evaluate what the opportunities are in the system. It's in a pilot, it's a full end-to-end solution where we determine monetization potential of the data and quick ROI from the engagement. And it takes about 3 months to really get from plug in the data to the insights that you can leverage for improvement of the business. And the longer term engagement is the enterprise license that we have, which we observed and achieved the over 40 times ROI from those engagements. But that engagement is really focused on plugging your data in real time to the platform and leveraging the results in the continuous basis, right, to make the product alive, right, and continuously refreshed with the new insights.
We're at time, Alla. Thank you so much for your presentation. We were at time, but maybe we have time for one question if there's a question from the audience. If you have a question, maybe switch on your camera and ask the question. So maybe I'll ask a question then. So I mean, you're talking to an expert audience here. When you talk to when you talk about sort of using an AI, for demand sensing, what kind of methods are you actually thinking about?
Well, I would say that applying, for example, machine learning techniques on demand pattern extraction, there are different methods for different type of businesses that work better, right? So if you talk about just the distribution model with the high, for example, where there are promotions in place, for example, then one model would be much more effective than compared to a traditional, let's say, construction business, project-based business, where a lot of the relationship with the customers are kind of built over time, and it's people-to-people type of relationship. Then those methods would not work, right? And you just really need to kind of try and see what model to pick to really make the proper implementation for that particular industry, right? Or a specific client even sometimes.
Okay, thank you for the talk, and thank you for answering that question. I'm sorry for the terrible time management. We're two past the hour, but Alla, I want to thank you and Itzi also for this first session of the practitioner track, and I hope you guys enjoy the next session. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.